Welcome to Kusa Cast, where we interview some of the most influential people in tourism from around the world.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Kusa Cast. Today, my guest is Jillian Blackbeard, the CEO and founder of Africa's Eden, all the way from Gaborone today. How are you doing, Jillian?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very good.
Yeah, great. Thanks for agreeing to do the podcast. It's always good to get a perspective from all the different regions in Southern Africa. We've had a lot of guests from South Africa. So yeah, great to have you on board. So the way we generally start is just tell us a bit about your background in the tourism industry and what led you to become the CEO and founder of Africa's Eden now.
Yeah, let's start that. I think let's start with a little bit of who Jillian is. And started my tourism journey, ages ago, about 15 years ago, working for Peermont Hotels. And after a couple of years there, I moved on to being the marketing manager for Botswana Tourism and executive for Botswana Tourism, and then moved forward from that after quite a few years into being the Africa director for the World Travel and Tourism Council. And that took us all the way up to the end of 2019, where I felt that it was time to come back to the region and do less of Africa. And I had an idea that I would like to go back to destination marketing. It's where I feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. But I had realized that there was something lacking in the way we market destinations. And the first thing being that often, especially if the destination is being marketed from a national perspective, we'd market it according to what the destination wanted, i.e. if there was a national interest, they would be pushing product that sometimes was the right one, but sometimes it wasn't necessarily what the consumer was wanting. And therefore you would be pushing it from the perspective of the destination. So the first idea was marketing for destinations should be done with the thought process of understanding who is actually traveling, the traveler, rather than the destination. So that was the first one. And then the second one was, you can't market our destination, certainly in Southern Africa, and I'm sure it's the same for other places like East Africa, as a single destination. We know that people generally choose multiple destinations, especially for first-time travel. So it seemed somewhat counterintuitive to be marketing a single destination when we know that travelers come to more than one destination. So the second one was, we need to do something regionally. And so at the time, I got together with a few private sector people in the Vic Falls and in Livingstone and in Botswana and said, look, this is my idea. Would you be interested in starting this? And of course, everyone was very happy. And we had about 10, 15 people said, yes, we'd love to support this. We'd like to work regionally. This is going to work for us. And we had that first meeting in February 2020. And
great.
We were talking about that was happening in China, and I'm like, it's going to happen. Nothing's going to be fine. Anyway, we set up Africa's Eden, and our first work was actually to work on combating the negative PR that was happening around the Victoria Falls drying up as a region, because it was affecting the region. And we put everything together with the thought of going forward, but you know that within a month, everything closed. Borders closed, traveling closed, and I was like, oh, this is a great time to start an organization for tourism. So Africa's Eden was born in somewhat a tumultuous time, but I do think that fast forward to where we are now, and we're 3.5 years, almost 4 years now down the line. And from the first 15 members we had back in February 2020, we are now sitting on over 400 members.
Gosh, wow. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I don't think we could have done so well if COVID happened. Because what it did was it created a moment for the tourism industry to stop, relook at what they were doing, and also created an environment where we started to collaborate across borders, across companies, in that competitive, collaborative environment. And so even in COVID, we needed to all work together. And people actually were more willing to stop and work together. Whereas if it hadn't happened and everything was going so well, maybe we wouldn't have done so well as an organization. So as much as it was a really difficult time, and our members were amazing, founding members, put in even personal money to keep that organization going, I think that COVID gave us an opportunity to do things differently. And I'm proud of the way the organization has been shaped, but also how our members participate as a collective in the organization.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been following Africa's Eden for quite some time. You had a fantastic opening conference in, when was it? February 2022, was it?
Yeah,
yeah.
That's right. It was the first event in tourism that
First
happened
event in tourism, yeah, and everybody
around the world, basically.
yeah, everybody was hugging each other. There were no masks. It was lovely. Yeah.
But I'll tell you a secret there. I mean, sometimes I think I might have been a little bit crazy, but up until days before that event, the borders weren't even open. And
Yeah.
one of our members was like, you've got 100 people coming from around the world and the borders aren't even open yet. What are you going to do if something happens? I'm like, no, I'm going ahead. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of very risky feeling all the time. But when it did come together, everyone, it was just such a buzz and everyone was so happy. And the great thing is we're already coming full circle. We're doing Vic Falls full circle next year, November, as the show. So, wow, I can't believe we're full circle already.
Yeah, no, it was great. I remember the PCR tests, like on standing on the banks of the Zambezi in a little hut. Every border we crossed. Yeah, I think we flew into flew into Kasane from Namibia, and then had to go back into Namibia, but then needed a PCR test for the 15 minutes that we were in Botswana. So, yeah, it was
100%. People were doing multiple tests. I think if you had any brains, you might have had them scraped out by the end of it. People were doing tests in the meeting center, and it was a crazy time.
Yeah.
But I think, at that time, and it shows the resilience of the travel industry, we were so desperate to, one, get back on the ground and travel to understand the passion, rekindle the passion that we have for the destination, but also just to meet people face to face, because we had been talking online. There was this whole boom of Zoom, but it really showed the resilience of how much tourism people are willing to do anything to get their business going. And secondly, how much we value the face-to-face meeting. And no matter how good you can have trade events, Zoom events, no matter how good they are, nothing replaces the community that tourism creates when we get together. And I think that really showed what we are as an industry. And I think it was quite heartwarming, that first one. I have to admit, I look at it so fondly. It's really hard to ever beat that event, because no matter how good we put an event together, it will never have that same buzz that, oh my God, it's the first one for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean the your COVID protocols were top notch. I remember all the was it the Palm Hotel? All of it was great outdoor meetings, and I mean it's that's one thing that resonates. I mean this is now, I think, my 41st podcast of Kusa Cast, and every single person that I've spoken to almost has spoken about that collaboration. And I love the saying that the rising tide raises all the ships, because that's what it is. It's that working together to help all of our businesses. So you guys came along just at the right time, I think.
I think so too. And you know what, for so long, and I guess it's the same with many industries, but for tourism it just seems so much more prevalent that the fact is we're bringing together people around the world to a place, but we operate in silos. And almost the biggest drive for me as Africa's Eden is to break down those silos. And when I'm talking about that, it's not just the traditional, this is a destination, i.e. this is Vic Falls, this is Livingstone, this is Kasane. So you have those silos. But then you have silos across business practices. So whether you are a trade partner, somebody who is selling the region. You would operate by yourself within your silo. So you would be part of let's say, an association like ATA or APTA, and you would live in that silo, or Virtuoso. So you would have that. And then you would only meet us once in a while, the people who are the product on the ground, and you'd meet us once in a while. Then you would have people that are even in the sense of on the downstream. So things like aviation, this big gap. And next week we are all going on to Windhoek for the Aviadev conference, which is founded by John Howell. And I like the way he thinks too, because what he's trying to do is break down that silo between aviation and destinations. And it seems to me that hasn't really been opened up either. But if you think about it, without flights, there is no tourism. But without tourism, there are no flights into the destination. So why did we always, in the past, live in two separate worlds? All the way down to, the ecosystem, the supply chain, the companies that support tourism, whether you're a bank who finances it or the person who gives linen and sheets. There's always been these separate silos. And what I'm trying to do as Africa's Eden is bring us all together on a platform so that what you're doing is making the pie bigger. You're not taking an existing pie and trying to divide it up into smaller and smaller pieces. What you're doing is saying, well, I'm going to bake this pie even bigger. We're going to do it sustainably, because at the same time, certainly in our region, development can't happen unchecked. You want to keep the authenticity, you want to keep the product, so you don't want too much growth that isn't looked at properly. But at the same time, there is growth, there's room for growth, and bringing everyone together means that we grow well together.
Absolutely. That's the 100%. Now, do you get involved? Are you just purely destination marketing, or would you get involved in situations such as how your members feel about Namibia's latest announcement about the visa regime for like the top producing countries? Is that something that you get involved with and try and get the ear of government about?
So Africa's Eden primarily, and what we describe ourselves in, is we are destination marketing and thought leadership. And the thought leadership happens, for example, with the virtual summit that we're having in the month of June, where we bring global leaders who are thought leaders on all topics, including things like enabling environments for tourism, to the destination to talk about it. You then get, because we're now looking at being the voice of the private sector, so in Botswana and Zimbabwe, I assume we are about 60 to 70% of private companies within the leisure market are our members. Namibia and Zambia a little bit lower. Obviously, people then put together their thoughts, and it comes through to us on our marketing channels, on our distribution channels, that this is a challenge. We as private sector cannot lobby directly. It isn't what we do, but we do put together the collective voice, i.e., this is a voice. Everyone is talking about it. And I'm working closely with Natalia Rosa from the SADC Business Council Tourism Alliance.
Yes.
And we put together statements that clarify issues that are happening in the region. So, for example, with the issue of Namibia, we have put down a guideline about this is being spoken about, but it hasn't been decided yet. So up until it's decided, these are the real rules. This is what you need to follow. And all the comments that we have from our members, we then put forward to our partners on the ground. So in the case of Namibia, we work very closely with HAN, the Hospitality Association of Namibia, and GITA, and we make sure that all of those voices are being put forward to GITA, who will then put it forward to government. And that comes from our members from the global travel trade. I know that with a lot of press happening about not only Namibia, but also the SADC Univisa, we had our members from around the world saying, well, how does that happen? How does that affect us? And the reality on the ground for that for the CASA Univisa was, it actually doesn't make a difference. For most of our travelers, it actually would have made things go backwards, because currently with the three countries in the regime, Botswana, Zambia, and Namibia, up until they change anything, you don't need a visa from a source market. So thinking about a uni visa is somewhat counterintuitive, because you don't need a visa. So it actually should have been pressure to put no visas from Zimbabwe. And then that would have been clarified. So we needed to go out to our trade and say, look, this is the rule. You don't actually need a visa. So it's, you don't need to worry about that. And if you do need a visa, there are visas on arrival, et cetera, et cetera. So Africa's Eden very much is the voice of the private sector, but we work with our partners in the governments, in the private sector tourism associations to amplify that. And we really want to be a source of information. So continuing on visas, you can go onto our website, you can go in, look at the visa page, and you will see all the up-to-date visa regulations and how to use them. And as soon as anything changes, we get that, we update our website, and we make sure you have the tools to do your business. Whether it's visas, whether it's flights into the destination, we do a lot of work with the airlines to make sure that the schedules are up to date and that you can find which flights fly into the destination. So those are things we're doing. At the time, we were the source of information for COVID. It's not so important now, but it's still one of our most visited pages about health regulations into the region. And the purpose of Africa's Eden is to be a place where you can trust the information if you have any questions about the destination. Whether you're based in New York and you need to know, how do I cross through the Kazangula Bridge crossing to, I don't know, I'm traveling to Namibia from Angola, and which are the best borders to cross. So yeah, that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic because, it's information is what people need, and it's great to have that portal. So, Jillian, have you noticed any major changes in travelers' behavior, or have your members noticed any changes since the pandemic on what people are now looking for?
Yes, not as much as you think, but yes, there is some trends starting to identify. And we are, as Africa's Eden, also doing collection of data every quarter, because making marketing decisions is really hard for our region. We don't have good data, and anything that comes from the national tourism statistics is generally about 3 to 4 years behind. So we're trying to collect data from our members as a finger on the pulse, which we do. There's a few things we're seeing. There are seemingly the lead times are changing, and it's almost going into two extremes. There's some that are shortening. So there's a group of travelers that are doing really short lead times. So in the past, before COVID, you were getting a year lead time. Now we're seeing very short lead times, like 2 months for some people. And we're seeing longer times for others, and it's going out to 18 months. So it's two extremes in terms of booking lead times. To give you an idea, in the first quarter this year, we polled our members, and for next year, so bookings of 2025, over 63% of our members were over 50% booked for 2025. So that's a big
incredible
lead time going forward. So there is some trend, and you're seeing it's either lengthening out, or there's also these like, I'm just going to travel, and they just travel. So those are the two trends we saw there. We've also seen a lengthening of stay. So people are generally spending longer, more than 10 days, and they are going to multiple destinations. So traditionally, they are traveling, and I guess they were doing this in the past, but maybe they're just spending longer. And with the new air routes, we're seeing that 67% of people who travel to an Africa's Eden country are also going on to Cape Town. And so that is something that we're seeing, these multi-country itineraries and multi-experiences, because they're generally going, Vic Falls, somewhere else. It could be the Delta, it could be Wangi, it could be Zambia, and then on to Cape Town. Part of that is coming from the demand of the traveler to see multiple places, but I also think there are a lot of aviation routing things happening in the aviation world, that Cape Town is boosting their air links, and through that, more people are adding on Cape Town. And saying that, on top of that, you're also seeing things which I call our pineapple on pizza kind of itineraries. So you're seeing things like the gorillas. So East Africa connecting into Africa's Eden, connecting into South Africa. So that's like 3 extraordinarily different destinations, which usually sold themselves separately, are now being put in and are easier. I'm not saying it's very easy, but you can certainly do that. You can fly with Rwanda Airways or Kenya Airways into the destination and then on to Cape Town. So you're seeing that. Or, for example, Africa's Eden, the Bush and Beach. So safari and then going on to Mozambique. We are looking to bring on Mozambique after our AGM as new countries. So Mozambique, Malawi, and Angola from August as part of the Africa's Eden family to capture that bush and beach. Or it might be, even our members are working within that trend. So, for example, Machaba, who has primarily been known as Safari, have now brought on Machaba Blue, which sells the Seychelles. So you're seeing this kind of product diversity. Those bigger companies that used to be just Safari are now expanding their offering. They're also moving from traditional areas. So that's also a trend that's really working well. And yeah, I think the travelers expect more. I'll tell you one of the disappointments though. After COVID, there was a time when I felt that we would travel better. We would be more responsible and travelers would demand real sustainability. And I feel that as much as I believe that that would change, there's still quite a lot of lip service being done towards sustainable tourism. And it does, there was a moment where I thought travelers would be more responsible, but it's kind of gone back to the way things are, which means that us within product side are also not forced to change and make sure that we're doing the best that we can. So it's a passion of mine. I believe that whatever we do, we have to do it correctly. And all of Africa has the opportunity to do it right. Most of what we're doing is new and it's developing. And if we don't work on tourism sustainably, ultimately we will degrade the very principle and the very product that we have to sell. So for me, I still push very hard on let's think about how we travel for good. Let's make sure that we're preserving the natural environment, that we're looking at seasonality. We're not putting in huge amounts of numbers without looking at carrying capacity, and also bringing along communities and other people who live in the destination as well. But not so much just the lip service, because there's a lot done like that, but doing it correctly that makes sure that everything is going forward in the right way for the future.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said that sustainable accreditation should be free and self-regulated amongst us because, like a lot of people maybe don't have the money or whatever to keep paying these annual fees to have this accreditation. And paying for an accreditation, for me, I don't know. I mean, I think that if someone is a member of an organization like Africa's Eden, that you should perhaps have a kind of a department or whatever it is that focuses on accreditation of sustainability that comes along with that. Is that something that you agree with and would kind of try and implement, like a self-regulated sustainable accreditation?
We are looking at it. We do have a code of conduct for our members. But I was looking at one step further, and the WTTC actually have a very good model, which doesn't cost a fortune, that gives people the tools to be more sustainable. But I also want to point out something. It's very fair and well that Africa's Eden as product, and we do a lot on the ground. I think that there's a call also for us to put pressure on the trade. What are the big booking companies, what are you doing in order to make sure you're sustainable? Because it's fair and well to get everyone. We put on the water saving techniques, we contribute to conservation, we work with communities. That's great. But also it has to work both ways. When you have big companies sending travel, they also need to be doing their operations and their work good. And there's some good examples. People like Exodus Travel, who are B Corp certified, they're doing good work. And so I would like to also see that our international members who book the region are also doing their part. And it can be simple things. You might have an office in central London, but are you doing everything that you need to do in order to make your business sustainable?
Yeah.
Are you actually talking about it in a realistic term? So I think that it's got to be pressure on all sides, not just the consumer, not just the product, but also the trade. At every level, we need to be thinking about the globe and also understanding better. I was talking to Olivia, who is talking on our summit. She's from BDC Travel, and she was saying to me that she's done some work with the airlines and just making the right informed choice if you're going direct versus going via somewhere else along the way to Africa, you are then using less carbon. So it is informing people on how do you make the choice. It's not so much, I've paid for my carbon credit offset, but maybe just selecting the right airline or the right route cuts your carbon emissions by half.
Yeah.
And so I think that empowering people to be better informed.
Yeah, I agree. But then also, I mean, the airlines, the model has always been it's cheaper to go on a 35-hour flight than it is to go on a 10-hour flight. I mean, doesn't that have to change too? I mean, why is it cheaper? We know obviously why, it's the convenience factor and all that, but that completely goes against all sustainable tourism models where you're paying half the price, but you're spending double, if not more, amount of time in the air.
Yep, exactly. So yes, it has to, as I said, everything is a multifaceted approach. And I do see that people are coming together. There are more opportunities to come together, and hopefully we'll chip away at it before it's too late. But yes, airlines have a lot to come to the party with, whether it's sustainability, whether it's looking at competitive flight pricing, whether it's understanding more about the destination. So they have a lot to answer for.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm often the only voice in tourism saying, guys, have you actually thought about this? So yes, I think they have a lot to answer for, but we also need to understand that airlines also have their challenges in the sense of often they're accountable to different ministries. Let's say it's a national airline. They would be accountable to a Ministry of Transport, or they would work within airports who are working within transport who don't necessarily understand tourism. And so there might be tax regimes, there might be other fueling regimes, which have nothing to do with tourism, but have such a big impact. And so we can't look at airlines in isolation and be there with a big stick and say, we're going to beat them because they're charging X, Y, and Z. That's counterproductive.
Yeah.
And I think that the more understanding that's created in forums that are open, and this is a big thing, it has to be a forum that has strong private sector and strong public sector to make change. So in the past, it was always public sector, lots of people, no change happening. And then private sector, lots of people, no government happening. So you now need to bring together those two elements. And that's across the board, whether we're talking about access, whether we're talking about conservation, whether we're talking about communities, whether we're talking about product development. If we don't have that strong public sector, people who can make a decision, listening to and being willing to listen to private sector, nothing's going to change. And we will continue to have a beautiful destination, but we certainly won't be reaching our full potential. And it's so sad. Africa makes, out of the total global revenue from tourism, the whole continent contributes 3%. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
We get just 1% more. Can you think about how many more jobs, how many more experiences, and even how much more there is for travelers to select and choose from? So the potential for growth is there, but it has to be done correctly.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if you don't, we might end up with even less than what we have and destroy the little that we already have.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I had David Frost on a couple of weeks ago, and he often talks about how Australia like booms, but why should it almost? Because we in Africa, we think I hope there's no Australians listening, but Africa has a lot to offer, and why it's just because of the ease that Australia, for as an example, allows tourism to nurture and grow, and with visa and all that kind of stuff. It's just that there's no red tape, no nothing, and they're flourishing. And David always uses Australia as a kind of benchmark example as to where we could be going. Yeah.
I had Colin Bell and Jillian.
Oh yes,
about
yeah,
that.
Colin, yeah.
And they're on a panel on investment for the summit in the next 2 weeks. And Colin was talking about Australia with Jillian, and we're talking about how policies have to be where Ministry of Tourism or the tourism vision is taken through across all the other ministries and the deciding ministries, whether it's transport or immigration or development. And we are seeing models like that in Africa. Rwanda does that pretty well. Tourism is part of all the you're seeing that in parts of the Western Cape with Westgrow. Even in Zambia, I know that the head of state is very aligned with the tourism thought process. So he doesn't leave tourism behind. And so it is happening. Sometimes less than it needs to be, but it is happening. And I just feel that there's so much to offer. And what we need to do is make sure that everybody is coming to the party to understand more. Whether you're sitting in your office based in New York or London, understanding the wide variety of products, understanding the intricacies, which is why we started those events. I mean, Africa's Eden does so many other activities, whether it's on our platforms or social, etc. But the concept behind Africa's Eden signature events was, we are tired as the destination and the products having to travel around the world to promote our destinations. So traditionally, we would all go to ITB, we'd go to WTM, you would even go to Indaba. But what you're doing is taking your product to somewhere else to talk about it. And I think that the only way you can truly sell Africa and Africa's Eden is through experience. So having events in destination is so important, because people get to understand and see and really become embedded in the destination, and they can talk from experience, and that trumps anything we could possibly do. So we've really put a lot of effort into in-destination events. We have 2 a year, one which we dedicate to African domiciled buyers, and one that we dedicate to global buyers. Exactly the same event, pre-tours, post-tours, one-on-one meetings, and it just continues to grow. And we move them around Africa's Eden as a destination, so it doesn't always go to the same place, in order to showcase all our regions. And even when we go abroad, when we're doing shows, let's say in the US or in Europe, we really try and come with a qualitative banner. When we're in the States, we invite buyers to come and spend 2 days with us in the same hotel, so that it's not just this brief meeting where you're like, okay, this is the product, blah, 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 10 minutes and off you go.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there's very little qualitative relationships built on that. Whereas if you go into the States and we say, okay, you've got 2 days with us in Austin, for example, we can take that time to do the meetings, teach you about the product, but also have destination workshops with experts from those destinations talking about that. And also just having that, like you were speaking about in Vic Falls, that personalized networking time, so that you have that relationship created for the future.
Yeah, I mean, multi-day trade shows are definitely the way to go, and especially like in a not confined isn't the right word, but you know what I mean, like in a hotel or something like that, because I don't think there's many people you'll find who will underestimate the power of those after hours conversations over a glass of wine or a beer. And quite a lot of the time that's where the buyers get to know you as a person and get to know the product, rather than in these quick 10-15 minute meetings. So that's a great model. So congratulations for doing that, because that's definitely the way to go. I mean, I'm just
trust, and I think trust is so important when you're selling, especially if it's a very high end or a multi-trip, multi-day itinerary. The costs are high. And you're not going to hand over $20,000 if you don't trust somebody, are you? So building trust is so important. Building trust, building knowledge. And for us as Africa's Eden, it's just creating that platform. It's making sure that you're able to have the trust and that it's qualitative, that you keep on coming back. And it's not, we do try and mix people up. We generally don't take the same people who are buyers 2 years in a row. So we try and mix people so that you get an opportunity. And obviously, by taking the risk of mixing people up, sometimes we get a few that might not work out for us. And that's fine too. I think, if you're working on an average of 60 to 70% of good meetings, you're doing well.
Of course.
And maybe the one that you didn't know actually does produce. Obviously, they might not, but I think that there's also an element of looking in and trying new and creating that enabling environment to do business better.
If there are any buyers around the world, hopefully they are listening in, where can they go to register their interest? Is it like an open registration all year round, or is it for specific conferences?
All of our events up until December 2025 are already listed on our website. So www.africaseden.travel. You can go into our events. You can register for any event. And depending on the event, some have some fees, some don't. You can register. For the SWACO, so for the signature events, there is a qualification process, but you can go ahead and register, and then we will qualify you. So sometimes there will be a process where we say, you're not exactly what we're looking for, but why don't you come, for example, if you're a US-based buyer, you can go ahead, register. And most of the time we do qualify you as long as you're doing business or look like you're going to be doing business in our region. We will bring you on board. And so, yes, it's open to everybody. You can check on where we are. Some shows are shorter. So, for example, in Europe, if we're in your city, you can log on, register. It doesn't cost anything. Or if you're a buyer in South Africa, we're about to go on a South African roadshow. I think we have already 163 buyers in our 3-city roadshow.
Right.
As a South African company, you can register. It doesn't cost you anything, and attend our shows.
For a product who's listening, how do they get involved? Do they have to be Africa's Eden members to exhibit, or how does that all work?
Okay, so the way it works is it is a membership organization. And here's a caveat I didn't say. We are entirely funded by our members. We are a not-for-profit company, so we are not allowed to make profit. We fund the operations, and it's a very small team of 4, which is crazy when you think about
Goodness
what we do.
me, yeah, 4 people running this whole thing. That's incredible. Well done.
And the money that we charge for membership covers a small amount. It doesn't even cover half of our operating costs, and that's just salaries and marketing, etc. So pay the membership fee, and thereafter it's a pay-to-play model for our events, and we then do the events. Now, to be an exhibitor, mostly speaking, you need to be an Africa's Eden member. So you become a member and then you can exhibit. So it's open to exhibit as long as you're a member. Now, members, remember, at the moment are only from the 4 countries, but it will expand to Mozambique, Malawi, and Angola from August. So you'd have to be based there. Whether you are a tour operator or a product, you are based in those 7 countries. As I said, though, we have understood that you can't sell destinations in isolation. So from Swakopmund, the signature show in Swakopmund in November, we have a Cape Town add-on, and we're looking for exhibitors from Cape Town or that area of Southern Africa to exhibit, and we are bringing our buyers to Cape Town. So that opens up to non-Africa's Eden countries. For our big international shows, we limit it. And here we limit it because I want it to be small and intimate. We have space for 25 exhibitors. So generally speaking, we fill those up with our members, and we go around the world with that. So it's a membership-driven organization. If you are not a member already, although I hope everyone is, and you're in Africa's Eden, if you're not, you're welcome to log on to the website. You'll see there's a tab for membership, tells you how to be a member, what your benefits are, etc., etc. So it's all there on the website.
That's great. And I can't wait for you to open up your representation company membership category? Because I will
It is open. It is open, Graeme. You can be a member as supply chain. So you, as a representative, can be a member of supply chain. That is not. So there's two ways if you are not in the 7 countries that you can be a member. If you are a representative company, you would fall under the category of supply chain because, as I said, you are supplying a service or a good to Africa's Eden members.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can apply for that. And if you are a travel trade member, so let's say you are Explore. So Sherry and her team have just joined us as a travel trade member. You can join us as a global travel trade member to partner with us. So anybody can join from around the world. Obviously, you can't sit and do exhibitions because it's different from the model that we're doing, but you certainly can become a member. You have access, you can log in. There's special members only login to our website, which gives you access to all our members, the correct email address. So if you're sitting in New York and you want to find out who do you book for at the Palm Hotel, who's the res manager? If you're a member, you can log in, you'll find that email address and the contact details of that person. Or if you want to find out if there's a air-conditioned tent, there was actually a query on our Global Travel Trade WhatsApp group. Somebody was looking for which camps in the Okavango Delta have air conditioning. And then you put that out as a travel trade member. So you could be based in, I don't know, San Diego, and you're looking for that question, put it out there and all our members can respond. And that's the essence. You're giving people the opportunity to ask in real time and have actual information from the product owners responding to you.
Great. Well, I'll log on now and make sure that I'm in the right category. Yeah, I'll make sure that I'm in the right category. Yeah, because it's so important for, like you say, you're an information portal, and if anyone is looking to expand their marketing reach in the source markets, then that's a great way to find it. And what do you? I mean, let's talk about the future challenges that first, and then we'll end off with some positive outlooks that you have. I had Grant Folds on a few months ago, and about anti-poaching and horrific stories of what's going on in the chain around the world, and now he goes out to places like Vietnam and the other places in the Far East and just explains the reality of the stupidity of what people are actually buying and what's causing all the poaching issues. How is it in your region? I know in South Africa it's still a problem. How is it in your region? The poaching.
I think and you can't look at poaching almost in a silo. There's so many threats to the natural resource, and tourism obviously relies on the natural resource. So the threats are poaching, but the threats might also be things that aren't human, like climate change. We're currently experiencing a very dry season, which is cyclical. It's not something we can stop. It could be growth in population, so the lack of land. It could be human-wildlife conflict. There's still issues, obviously, in poverty. So if you look at our region, yes, it might be the last remaining natural heritage of the world. It's also under pressure from many, many other elements, and it's so complex. You can't look at poaching as one element. You can't look at it as the demand side from Asia. You can't look at it as the supply side from people poaching. There's so many interrelated issues. And my belief is to look at this not as oh my God, it's all going to end. We need to work together and understand the value of the natural resource. And within that, in the green economy, and within that land, tourism is such a strong factor, because through tourism, you can protect the land, but you can also offer jobs and give people an opportunity to move out of poverty, which in turn then helps preserve the natural area.
Exactly.
You cannot look at it as I need to protect a rhino. You have to look at it as I need to uplift the people who live in and around those areas. Therefore, it might be giving them jobs directly in tourism, but it might be also enabling them to maybe to grow vegetables which supply various other tourism sectors, or, be part of the gin production, which is using natural resources. So I think tourism gives us a great way to move forward, and I think we need to prioritize that, but we also need to look at the complex issues. You cannot look at poaching alone. You cannot look at animal conservation in isolation. You have to look at the wider environment that we live in. And if tourism comes together and works hard together, and obviously that's why we talked about sustainability, buys local, employs local, uplifts people, then it is a real way we can keep the natural environment. And there are successes. There's a lot of successes. Places like South Luangwa and their project South Luangwa does really well in uplifting a huge community of people around the park to decrease poaching, to decrease poverty, to empower people. You're seeing that also in the areas around Kafui, where African Parks is very active. And, one of the reasons why we've brought on Angola is because, yes, there isn't a lot of tourism product there, but if tourism doesn't grow and strengthen itself in Angola, which is the source of the river, which is the source of most of our natural environment, there won't be anything left in any of our countries. So we need to also champion areas that might not necessarily have that. So my answer to you is yes, we always go with conservation message. Yes, we believe in tourism being non-consumptive, to looking at the SASTA animal interaction guide, so doing it correctly. We support most organizations that are working within Africa's Eden, whether it's from an anti-poaching perspective or, in a community upliftment perspective. And it's also amplifying the good work and helping companies who do that within their own business. I mean, if you look at Desert and Delta, they do tremendous amount of work within communities to keep everything moving forward. And each member does that. So it's us amplifying that to make sure that everyone works towards a common goal.
Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have guests like Melissa Foley and Julie Cheetham on the show as well. Melissa is doing a lot of work with ATA. In fact, in London in a couple of weeks' time, they're having the first ATA for Action Awards, which is focused on the sustainable and conservation efforts of people in Africa, businesses in Africa. And then, of course, Julie's got Weaver, which does help a lot of product with, quantifying the sustainable efforts. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff going on. And we've spoken a lot about sustainability isn't just no plastic water bottles kind of thing. There's a lot more, as you've mentioned, community upliftment and all that. So there is that. And so I'm glad to see, and that's where I'm kind of aligning the members of my portfolio as well. They have to kind of have some form of focus on that way. So
but a big one, Graeme, is, and we seem to forget this because it goes into the realm of operations, but a big one is sourcing locally.
Yes, of course.
Because as the UN, they have a factor, they call it now I'm trying to think, the multiplying factor of the supply chain. Basically, for $1 that comes in as revenue from a tourism business directly, it's generally multiplied by 1.75 for indirect value. And that goes up to almost 2 if we are sourcing goods and services locally. And that really empowers the wider community. And that's not to say that you should only buy things and that means it would degrade your product locally, but it's really doing the work. So there is a bit of work to be done. And I'm working, in the past, we worked with the UNWTO, and they had a wonderful guide called the One Planet Guide. It's still there, on how to make sure that your operations are circular. And it's something that people don't really look at. And that's why I feel it's something we need to talk about. It's easy to talk about conservation. It's easy to talk about, preserving natural environment or doing all of these things like solar power. Those are things that people know. But the big difference comes from working locally. It's buying locally, employing locally, uplifting those people within your circular economy. So that's why we've brought on suppliers of goods and services into Africa's Eden. And it's tough. We're not doing that well. It's not as easy to get people involved. And I can tell you now, we struggle. We have events for them. It's hard to get people there, and they haven't understood. But I'm going to keep on going and keep on saying, no, you've got to be there. You've got to join us. And eventually we'll get there.
Yeah.
I think that a major change will happen.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was just remembering now. I was on a panel at a massive tourism conference lately, and I won't mention which one. But I said, we were talking about sustainability, and I said to the audience, I said, here we are talking about sustainability and conservation, but have you noticed that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of single-use plastic bottles on your tables? So I don't know how well that went down with the organizers, but I mean, that's the kind of thing.
Trust me, I was in another conference just a few weeks ago, same thing. And it was a international conference. And I was like, oh my God, we're talking about the green economy with plastic bottles.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just that, and that's just one thing, yeah, I think there's just a lot of work to be done, but thankfully there are loads of champions out there that are guiding, guiding everybody. And let's hope within a few years, it's, I think all the countries have their targets and everything like that. And let's hope, because everybody, it's become a cliche and almost become, I don't know, that we need to think about our children and our grandchildren and our great grandchildren and all that. And, it's, we just each of the 8 billion of us have to do our bit, So just to end off, I like to always end off with some positive. What are you seeing that's making you smile every day, keeping you motivated in your role? What's upcoming that you're very excited about, can't wait for, and and that'll just keep on going to uplift the region?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. After living for 15 years in Europe, every day that I'm in Africa, I love the fact that the sun shines. So it's the first one.
So that's a good point. Yeah.
And it's dry. The sun is generally shining when you come and visit. So that's a plus. But
yeah.
Now, what am I excited about? I'm really excited about the thought leadership component of Africa's Eden. And I'm extraordinarily excited about the upcoming summit, which anybody can register for free on our website. There's some amazing panels and just fabulous speakers, everyone from Sherry Briggs to Caroline Moultrie to Dave Wilson to Colin Bell. There's just an immense array of amazing people talking about the summit. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the growth of Africa's Eden to bringing on those other countries.
Yeah.
It means that we are servicing a region in its entirety, and we continue to grow. And it's really just going forward. I think almost there is growth, but now we're on the 4th year. It's also good to stand back and think, wow, we've done a lot. Let's make sure that what we're doing better, or I like to say the best.
Of course, I am high.
Sometimes growth is also about saying, okay, let's stop and make sure the sun is always shining perfectly on Africa's Eden, and we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So that's what's keeping me going this year, and it keeps my team going. And really a shout out to them. We have Louise, who's based in Vic Falls. She's my 2IC. Kim, who's based in Livingston, who works on all the marketing, all the social, that wonderful magazine that we publish. And Electra, who sits in Gaborone with me, who looks after all the buyers. And sometimes I'm wondering, these buyers, they are so demanding when they come and travel.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
I think it's their opportunity of being the traveler. So they seem to be even more demanding than we've ever imagined, but she looks after them. So as a team, we are wonderfully put together and work together. And we have a wonderful support also from our board. It is a voluntary board. The board chairman is Dave Glynn. We have members of the board in each of the countries. So in Botswana, it's Jonathan Gibson. In Zambia, Mike McNamara. In Namibia, Simone Micheletti. And then our experts, Gillian Saunders, Paul Duval from Where To, and Paul van der Brink from Cape Town Air Access. And they're just, every time I get together, either with my team or my board, I feel like, oh my goodness, we really are going in the right direction. So I'm thankful for them and grateful in the end to our members, because they're the ones that make this going. Without them, there would be no Africa's Eden.
Yeah.
And so when I wake up in the morning, which I love because I work from home, so I don't have to wake up early.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I look at the sun shining and I'm like, well, I'm grateful for this opportunity, and it wouldn't have happened without everyone coming together.
One thing I like about Africa is, yes, it's sunny a lot of the time, but when it rains, it flipping rains, and then you get those downpours with thunder and lightning. There's nothing better than an African thunderstorm, that's for sure. Well, if
no, that's where you need at every event to be playing that Toto song.
Yes,
it's like the theme song.
Yes, yeah.
The rains of Africa.
Well, that's the one thing about Toto song that always gets me, is that the Kilimanjaro does not rise above the Serengeti. So I actually want to. So that's one of the lines of the song.
Hey, that's so typical of any song, anything about Africa. It's like Falls is not in South Africa.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, we'll let Toto get away with it. It's a good song. So great, Jillian. Thanks so much for doing this. It's always a pleasure catching up with fellow tourism colleagues, and you joining a long list of some great guests that I've had. And so thanks for your time. And I'm sure we'll see you anywhere around the world or back down in Southern Africa again soon.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Graeme. And to everyone, everything you need about Africa's Eden is on our website. So www.africaseden.travel. And thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Jillian. I'll let you know when this goes out. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Take care.
Ciao. Bye. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into Kusa Cast, where we explore the world of tourism with leaders from all corners of the globe. Join me, Graeme Watson, for future episodes as we dive into the latest trends and insights from the industry. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating, and we'll see you next time on Kusa Cast.